Mini DiverCity. This is the mini version, as I understand it, of a larger game, but I haven't played that one. I played this one though, so this is what I'm reviewing today. DiverCity, clearly a pun on diversity, and that makes sense because in this cooperative game, players will cooperate to try to protect the diversity of life in this beautiful area of the ocean that is being threatened by different types of unscrupulous businessmen. Some people want to build too many hotels, some other people want to drill for oil, and then there are also unscrupulous fishermen that use dynamite to to kill large numbers of fish, but of course that is very bad for the environment in the long run. So you're collecting evidence, you'll try to save different species before it is too late. Each player in the game controls a different scientist. Each player receives a card such as this one at the beginning of the game. Each character has a one-time advantage. It's a different one for each character. So you have this card in front of you, and when you use it, you flip it face down as a reminder that you cannot use that advantage anymore. Each player also has a hand of species cards that you cannot look at. Basically, when you hold your cards, you look at the back and the front is visible to the other players, as you can also see the other players' cards. Similar to Wannabe and a couple of other games that have been released in the last couple of years. But now let you peek to these cards, and they simply represent different types of animals. These animals that we're trying to save. Here in the middle of the table you will place a line of cards that will act pretty much like a board, really. In each area you will place a token representing one of these threatened species that you're trying to save. Each band of the board has 3 spaces, a central space, which is the initial one, and 2 other spaces here. Different game effects will move the tokens representing the animals in different directions. If a game effect moves a token out of the board in that direction, then the animal is extinct, it is out of the game. There are no game effects that can touch it anymore, but it is bad for you because if a certain number of animals go extinct, then you lose the game. If, however, a token moves to the other side of the board, leaves the board on this side, then the species is saved. You don't have to worry about it again. Again, no game effects can affect a saved species, and if you save a certain number of them, you win the game. But you have to save a number of species before one of several conditions that may make you lose the game will happen. You lose the game if too many species go extinct. Those are the species cards that you will use to perform actions. If that deck runs out and you cannot perform actions, you also lose the game. Also here you see under the main quote-unquote board a line of cards. On one side they represent beautiful islands, and on the other side a hotel that somebody wants to build there. During the game there will be game effects that will flip these cards to their hotel side, and then you will use game effects to flip them back to their island side. If all these cards are on their hotel side face up, then you also lose the game. So as you can see, there are many ways that this can happen. Now, players take turns, but each turn starts with an action performed by the enemy. So at the beginning of a player's turn, the active player will draw a card from this deck and will simply resolve the bad stuff that the enemies do. Some cards for here representing the dynamite fishers. So when you flip this card face up, you simply draw a card from this deck here. You place it there in the discard pile, and you move the corresponding animal one space towards extinction. If the animal was already there, moving it by 1 space in that direction means off the board, and that means that animal is now no longer here. That means that the active player, when you flip this card, the active player has to discard a card from hand, and the card from hand that you discard, well, that poor animal also will be moved 1 space towards extinction. So this is important because there are actions like you that will allow you to figure out what you have in your hand. And once you know that, then you have to remember. If, for example, I know that I have these two cards here, and I know that they are here, they represent a species that already is saved, so I don't care if I discard that card. So if the enemy deck instructs me to discard a card, and the card is discarded, then I move it towards extinction. Well, I remember I have this one in my hand, I play this one, boom, and nothing happens, because remember, this is what saved and extinct animals don't do anything anymore. But of course, if I have to perform that action and I discard this one, oh darn. Not only have I lost a card that I may use to save animals, but I also am worsening the situation of my friends. The cards will simply tell you to flip a number of these cards to the hotel side if they're not already on that side. If they're on that side, nothing happens. And then we have enemy cards that have multiple penalties, and then you simply resolve them from top to bottom. After you resolve the awful card for that turn, it is time for you to take an action as the active player. You can do one of several things. For an action, simply enough, you can flip a hotel back to the island side. You're boycotting the hotel, I believe. You may use the walkie-talkie, which means you can tell a player what they have in their hand. You can simply, suppose I'm sitting there and now my friend is using the walkie-talkie, telling me, here you have the hairy puffer fish, here you have the snake of the sea. These are all technical names that I'm just making up as I go. This is the guy with many arms, I think it's called the octopus, and here the pancake, the blue pancake that lives at the bottom of the sea. So, in the rule book you have a description and also a name for all these animals, but why not make up your own? It's more fun that way. So, you can tell somebody what they have, touching, indicating. Of course, here it is up to them to use their memory. You may have a system, for example, I like to put on this side of my hand all of the cards that represent the animals that I can discard because they're extinct or saved. And here, as close as possible to this edge, to place animals that I'm planning to use. Because the third action that you can do is to play a card from hand. When you play a card from hand, you discard it face up, and pretty much that's the first time that you see it, and then you move the corresponding animal one space towards safety, if that animal is still there. And after that, you draw a new card that you don't see, and then it's up to you, whatever method you're using, to place it here. Summarizing, your actions will be to flip a card back to its island side, or to tell somebody what they have in their hand, or to play cards to try to save these animals. Save enough animals before it's too late, and you and your group win the game. Remember, this is a cooperative game, otherwise, well, you lose the game. The game can also be played solo by pretty much using, by a player that controls two characters and two hands of cards. So as you're playing with one character, you can use the walkie-talkie action, look at the other hand of cards, and then you put it down. And it works the way, surprisingly enough. Games with hidden information don't always work in solitaire, but well, this one does. Mini DiverCity is a small, fun, and very enjoyable game. To me, it is also nice to have a small cooperative game. Thinking of cooperative games, of course, I mean, the golden standard is Pandemic, but it also takes a while if you're playing with new people to teach them the game, to set it up, to seed the deck, etc, etc. To have a cooperative game that is that simple, you set it up quickly, you can teach it quickly, and play so intuitively and so smoothly, well, to me that is something great. I like the theme, I like the art, it's very pleasant. I like the message, especially if you're playing with young people, then there's a good message here about the importance of preserving the environment. There's this crazy idea that if you let the businessmen do whatever they want in the pursuit of wealth, the result may not be good for the environment. Who would have thunk? But it's good that new generations gain awareness of such an obvious fact that, however, is not that obvious to everybody. And just mechanically the game works very well because it is so simple, because it is so intuitive, but you still have interesting decisions. The memory element, it doesn't feel dry, doesn't feel boring as you may have in other games where, well, you just have to remember what to do, where my cards are. You have that element, but also as you play them, then you're gonna get other cards that you don't necessarily know, well, you don't know, not gonna know what they are until somebody uses the walkie-talkie action towards you. So there is this management of opportunity costs, which is really interesting because that's opportunity cost is what you have here, actions. And so now I have a hand of cards, two which I remember what they are, but then I play I play two cards, I have two that I don't know, and then, well, I'm hoping that somebody walkie-talkies to me, or maybe I'm just hoping that, well, that they don't, and I decide to go randomly. I need to discard a card, and now I'm gonna go randomly with this card here. So they're just ways in which you can, I would say, almost manage the amount of risk that you want to take. Because, for example, I have this card here. Remember, I have it, I could just save these pieces, but at the same time, 5 hotels have been built and a 6th one, and we only have one that if built will lead us to defeat. So I could choose to save the animal now, but then I have to hope that in fact the next action before the next player can go is not gonna reveal that hotel, and then we'll lose the game. Well, play it safe, and then I protect the islands, I flip another hotel. But then the animal gets extinct, and so we created a situation of stasis in which we haven't lost the game, but also we haven't progressed towards victory. So there are just some very interesting elements here. As in Anabi, as in other games of this kind, after a while people will start developing telepathy. That's just the way it is, that people start working more synergistically, and it's inexplicable, ineffable, or simply players will get it, will get to communicate with one another, to understand what the other player will do when it is that you want me to walkie-talkie you, or when it is that it's okay to do this or do that. The game doesn't have a lot of communication. In fact, you cannot communicate freely, so it's not going to be a party-type game with a lot of friendly banter and chatting and laughing, because by definition the rules of the game don't allow you. You could make it a little more drastic, a little less dramatic, less drastic, and so people can chat and talk as long as they are not giving each other information about the game itself, and that's a little more humane, I believe. And also, again, as I pointed out before, it's kind of fascinating that you have a game about hidden information that does work as a solitary game, not always the case. So Mini DiverCity, it's an interesting game with a fascinating theme, beautiful art. It's all about opportunity cost, but it's just, it gives you interesting decisions within an engine that's just so simple, so linear, so straightforward. Flip the enemy deck and do the one thing that the card tells you to do, or two tops, and then take one of those 3 actions. Very simple, but not trivial, and that to me is quite fascinating. Mini DiverCity, definitely a small game, a little bit of a filler, but a fascinating one. Also one that I find particularly hard to beat, so there's that advantage that you can also tweak the difficulty a little higher, a little easier, a little harder. So if you find it too hard, make it easier. If you find it too easy, you can adjust that. But I find that even the entry level to beat the game at the easiest level, that's already a challenge, and also that is something good because it will keep the game fresh. Before you get to the maximum difficulty and you find that easy, I think you're gonna get a lot of play out of Mini DiverCity. I don't think that's gonna happen all that soon.